From rolling pin to engine shaft, from home to factory, cylinders are important to all of us. So is the craftsmanship of the lathe operator, who combines his skill with the ingenuity of the lathe to turn perfect cylinders. Probably the first woodworking machine ever built, the lathe still uses the basic principle of turning and is indispensable in woodworking. Let's see how we'll use the lathe to turn a cylinder 8 inches long and 2 inches in diameter. The stock for any job should, of course, be larger than the diameter of the completed work, and allow at least 2 additional inches on the length for centering and trimming. In other words, measure off 10 inches, since the completed cylinder is to be 8, and saw the stock to length. Now we're ready to locate the exact center of each end, and there are 2 ways to do it. With a straight edge and pencil, draw diagonal lines across the ends of the stock. Where these 2 lines meet is the center of the stock. Many woodworkers prefer to make these diagonal lines with a back saw, like this. Use a nail set to make a small hole where the diagonal marks cross each other. Now the stock is ready to go into the lathe. The lathe is made up of simple parts. First, there's the controlled power supply, usually an electric motor, to drive a shaft that's known as the spindle. This is housed in the headstock. Attached to the spindle is the live or head center. With a center drift, punch out the head center from the headstock of the lathe. Stand the stock on end and drive the point of the head center into the hole you made with the nail set. Put 2 or 3 drops of oil in the center hole at the opposite end of the stock and replace the head center. The other end of the work will be held in place by the tailstock. It has a spindle holding the dead or tail center and a hand wheel for adjustment. Move the tailstock to about a 1/4 inch from the end of your work and tighten it to the bed of the lathe with the clamping lever. Turn the hand wheel until the tail center is located tightly in the nail set hole at the other end of the stock. Now turn the wheel back about an 1/8 turn to relieve the pressure on the stock and let it spin freely. Lock the spindle by tightening the clamp. The stock is in position, ready to go. Lathes are equipped with a tool rest that can be adjusted according to the diameter of the stock being turned. Move the rest until the edge is about an 1/8 inch from the work and both parallel and level with its center line. Tighten the clamps to lock it securely in place. Check the edge of the tool rest to be sure it's smooth. Nicked edges on a tool rest cause difficulty in turning and are dangerous. Always keep the machine well oiled. Be sure your necktie is tucked in, or removed if you're not wearing a high-bibbed apron. And roll up your sleeves. We're ready to start the motor. Modern lathes have 4 speeds, and the rule for selection of speed is simply the smaller the work, the higher the speed. Turning a 2-inch cylinder is small work, but until the rough turning is done, set the lathe for 2nd speed. From the toolbox, select a gouge to do the first rough turning. Always check the condition of tools to be sure they're sharp and have no nicks. With the feet about 14 inches apart, stand at a convenient distance from the work. Place the gouge on the tool rest with the right hand dropped well down and resting against the side of the body. Hold the tool firmly and use the edge of your first finger as a guide along the tool rest. Slant the point of the gouge at about a 45-degree angle and bring the tool slowly into contact with the revolving work. Taking a light cut, move the tool evenly along the work. When you come to the end, reverse the tool by rolling it over and make a cut in the opposite direction. Repeat these operations back and forth until the square stock has been reduced to a cylinder. You will notice that the gouge vibrates less and less as the cutting progresses. The first step in the operation is completed. Stop the lathe to get some measurements. Spring-set outside calipers are used for measuring diameter. Set the calipers for a measurement of an 1/8 inch larger than the completed cylinder, or you should work down to the final diameter in easy stages. Now, with the calipers, test your work to see if you are nearing the completion of the turning. No, more turning is necessary. And now you may use a higher speed. Set the motor for the 3rd speed. Select the parting tool from the toolbox and be sure it's sharp. The parting tool is used to establish the diameter. With the parting tool in one hand, aim its point directly at the center line of the work and continue the turning in one spot until the legs of the calipers just pass over the work. Repeat this operation every inch or two along the length of the work. Now resume turning with the gouge. When the work seems to be smoothed down, test the cylinder in several places to see that the diameter is uniform. It's time to do some measuring for the final completed cylinder, 8 inches long. There are 2 ways to do this. With a pencil and rule like this, or with a pair of dividers. Set the dividers for an 8-inch measurement. And hold the points lightly against the work until clear lines are established. Now place the parting tool on the rest, aiming it straight at the center line of the work. Keep the side of the tool even with guide mark and cut in deeply. Be sure the tool is at right angles to the center line. The cut won't be straight. Repeat the operation at the 2nd mark, and we're ready for more measuring. Set the calipers to a measurement just a little larger than the final diameter. Select a 1/2-inch flat chisel from the toolbox and see that it's sharp. The flat chisel is used as a scraping tool. Again, with the calipers in one hand, hold the flat chisel with the other against the work with the beveled edge down until the calipers just slip over the cylinder. Be careful not to cut too deeply, for we're getting close to the final measurement. Now we're ready for the tool that calls for the greatest amount of skill. It's the skew chisel. If the edge doesn't seem quite sharp enough, whet it to a keen edge on the oil stone you should keep handy at all times. Stop the lathe and reset the tool rest to within 1/8 of an inch from the work and slightly above the center line of the work for this size skew. The wider the skew, the lower the tool rest should be set. Place the skew chisel on the tool rest before bringing it into contact with the work. Keep the face of the bevel at an angle with the surface of the work. Keep the chisel on the tool rest and against the work throughout the cut. Failure to do this is the chief cause of difficulty in using the skew chisel successfully. Hold the chisel firmly and keep it moving. At the end of the cut, reverse the angle and move in the opposite direction. Continue until the work has been smoothed off. Reset your calipers to the final measurement of 2 inches. Now continue the cutting or shearing until the calipers will barely slip over the cylinder anywhere on its length. The job is completed. Pull the tool rest away from the work. Slip a piece of fine sandpaper over a block of wood and hold it lightly against the work, moving it from side to side until the work is perfectly smooth. Stop the lathe. Back off the tailstock and remove the work. Wrap a piece of heavy paper around the work to protect it. Fasten it in a vise and saw off the rough ends. The measurements are right, but the ends are still a little rough. Sanding will fix that. And we have the completed cylinder. Whatever its ultimate use, the cylinder is the first goal in all turning. You have to turn a cylinder before you can complete almost any turned object. Let's remember these things. Never extend the tailstock spindle more than absolutely necessary. Keep the lathe well oiled. Always oil the tail center end of the stock before putting it in the lathe. Be careful about selecting speeds. The larger the size, the slower the speed, remember. Work down to the final measurement by easy stages. In using the skew, set the tool rest according to the size of the tool. The wider the skew, the lower the tool rest should be. So the cutting is always done at the center of the tool's cutting edge. If the tool rest isn't set correctly, there is danger of the point of the skew catching in the work. Be sure to put your tools back in the box. And clean off the lathe when you have finished with it. All wood turning is done on the lathe. It's one of the important woodworking tools. There is no industry in the world that hasn't been influenced by the curved surfaces obtainable only through the use of the lathe.